Welcome back to another live edition of the Podium Finish Live. I'm your host, Rob Tiongson, outside of Austin, Texas, and somewhere in the US is my good friend, Parker Kligerman, driver of the number 48 Spiked Machine, Big Machine Racing, Spiked Coolers, Chevrolet Camaro. That's a mouthful, my friend, but
It is.
first of all, it is a big mouthful, but how have you been doing, man? It's been a while.
Doing great. Yeah, we're off to a decent start in the Big Machine Racing, Big Machine Vodka, Spiked Coors, Chevy Camaro, as you want to be said perfectly. But yeah, no, we've off to a solid start. It's not like we've set the world on fire, but we also haven't had, we haven't had. I mean, it hasn't been perfectly clean, but we've been successful, right? And the building blocks are there. And that's really what was important to me in these first 5 or so races, was to set the tone for our team, for the series, to understand, where we stack up. And I think we've shown that. I really think, barring a couple little things happening in these first 5, we're sitting closer to the top 5 in points than where we are right now. And we're really only, I think it's like 7 points out of 6 or something. So it's really tight. And, there's numerous places in these first 5 that I think we could have cleaned some things up and, gotten those points that we needed there. And then, of course, the other night in Atlanta, it felt like we put everything together, won a stage, which was nice to knock out in the first 5 races. That's cool. We got a playoff point. That's big. And it would have been cool to lock ourselves in the playoffs with that win there, but I think we'll have plenty more opportunities going forward. So it's funny. Like, last week after Phoenix, and before Atlanta, I think, my crew chief and I sat down and I just said, "Hey, look, Patrick, man, we have the speed. We're showing up 10th on average on everything, and that's not far off at all. I'm still learning these cars a little bit, that sort of thing." I just said, "Look, let's just keep building what we're doing. We are going to win a lot of races." And we almost go and win the next weekend. So I looked like a genius. That was nice. But he agreed. And I think you see that from this whole race team right now, that we just know we're just scratching the surface of our potential.
Absolutely. I mean, Scarper said that whole Big Machine Racing team, they invest a lot to not just show up and race. They're there to really compete and to win races. And they have found a good, stable driver in you to make their Xfinity program what it is and what we're seeing right now. And you did touch upon Atlanta, which I do want to ask you about right from the start, because, man, like you said, you were in position to win that race. And I'm sure it took some time to kind of like decompress, kind of remove that from the data banks. But how does a driver do that? Because I'm sure at times, like me with my work, I sometimes go, man, if I hadn't made that mistake, I would have had a 10 out of 10 day. Like, what do you do to reset the button on that?
It's a good question. It's funny because I actually felt like Vegas taught me a good lesson. And I've really worked heavily in the last couple of years, and especially this year, on the mental side of our sport. I just truly believe that when you get in one of these top cars at the pointy end of the field, whether it's trucks, Xfinity, or Cup, the difference between you and where you want to be is you. And this is entirely a mental game. Now, you can't drive a slow race car fast, as Kevin Harvick likes to say, but when you get within the same realm, speed-wise with your race cars, then it's down to you as a driver. And a lot of that is what happens between your ears up here. And so I felt like Vegas, when we got spun out by John Hunter Nemechek, I didn't do a good job personally inside the car of letting go of that moment that I couldn't control and focusing on the task at hand. And I think when I look back at that race, if barring a slow pit stop in the last green flag run, we were going to finish somewhere around 8th and 9th. We end up 11th. We recovered great, but I just felt like personally inside there was a little bit of a lingering not letting go. And so I worked over the next couple of weeks, especially at Phoenix, and having the issue in qualifying and letting go of that and focusing on the backup car and the task at hand. And we were really successful in that race with the backup car. We almost had a home run and getting a top 10 at the end of the race, which would have been, amazing. So those 2 races taught me the lessons that what happened at Atlanta, which was so disappointing because, it's one thing if it's a couple cars getting squirrely and running into each other. It's another thing when it's a champion of the sport who, I still don't understand what the intention was. Daniel called me and apologized on Sunday, But then I was shown some things that make me believe that I don't know how much of what he said was very true. And so I just disappointed and angry, and it's such a stupid move. It's it's a dangerous thing to do. And so I didn't appreciate that one bit. But part of what I went into all that other stuff was to say, that was letting go is a big part of that, and being able to focus forward. And that's what I've done. And that's where I've been focusing fully on Coda this coming week. And that's the best thing. And sometimes the worst thing about NASCAR is that you go week to week to week. So it's really easy to kind of let go of the past, because you have to focus on the future. You can't dwell too hard. And so that's what I've been doing.
I mean, that's true. That's the unique thing about NASCAR, which I think that's why a lot of people like to be a fan of racing compared to other sports. I mean, you have a lot of everyday Americans, everyday people who work 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, and they can relate to you guys in a way, maybe not going 200 miles an hour, going left and right and trying to win a hook here and there. But I mean, you guys epitomize what the American dream's about, trying to work hard, trying to succeed. And when you don't, it's really frustrating. And, I know you mentioned on Saturday and how you wanted to talk to Daniel, and I know he called you. Do you feel like you have to have that conversation maybe at Coda or sometime down the road to maybe just say, hey, man to man, let's talk. Let's just kind of air it out right now.
I appreciate his call, and I did think that, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Even when I saw the replay, I gave the benefit of the doubt. But no, I do not want to talk. And to be honest, I just don't have that sort of move in my arsenal. It's not how I race, not how I think about things in this sport. And so it's, if that's the level that someone wants to go to try and win a race, I don't know how long that will last for them. And I think I'm not the only one who knows, what that line is to cross. And so, no, I don't feel like I need to talk to him. And, to be honest, I think we can just focus on our races and what we're doing and to make sure we're up front. And I think we will be up front very often and be in position to win races. And that's my focus.
And for sure. And then you have been showcasing that you are capable of competing at a high level at a lot of these racetracks so far. And I think the next month alone is just going to show a lot of the variety of NASCAR tracks that makes this sort of Southern swing so fun and unique for everybody involved, especially at my backdoor racetrack, Coda. I mean, you're going to be competing twice this weekend. So let's talk about that before we get back to the number 48 program. Now, I understand that you're to be driving the same truck that won the Mid-Ohio race. So tell me just how special that truck is to you, and how seminal is that truck to you in terms of your breakthrough moment? Because you had been working for NBC NASCAR and doing a good job with that, but I know deep down you wanted to be back in the race seat.
Yeah, no, it was huge. And that truck has been with us for years. It was an old, it was the backup truck for Cole Custer when he was at Junior Motorsports in the Truck Series, to give you an idea of how old it is. So wow. It's been around a while. It's, but it's, it might even be a Turner truck for all I know. We had a couple of those, but it's something that Chris Carrier and myself and the Henderson race team tweaked on. And, we went to Daytona road course with it during COVID. It was super fast. And that was that's one of those days that got away from us. That I really felt that was a day where we could have challenged for a win if we just were a little cleaner. And from that moment, we just, every road course race tweaked on it here and there. It might actually be the same truck we ran all the way back at Mosport in 2017. I'm coming to think of it. So we've had it for a while. Anyway, it's something we've tweaked on. We've worked on it. We've just refined the package in it. And last year, we really started to show that, right? And even the year before, when we finished the top 5 at Watkins Glen, we were super fast. Coda that year, we were quick in the rain and got spun out late in the race, going for, would have been a top 5 or top 3 finish, I think. So it's always had speed. And what Mid-Ohio was just where we fully refined everything. And, having the road courses ahead of Mid-Ohio last year really helped, because Coda, we were running second when we ran out of fuel and got spun on the last lap. And then at Sonoma, we actually went away with the setup that proved to not be right. We still finished 7th, but I think we could have been better. And then we took some of those learnings from both, applied it to Mid-Ohio, went out and won. So, in terms of like that truck and its setup and everything, just know it's very similar. it's because it's been a building process over a couple of years. But that's really when you in road course racing for stock cars, except for the Cup Series is different now. But in years prior, when you look at why AJ Allmendinger has had such success, I would venture to say that the setup of that race car over the last 4 or 5 years has very seldom been, very far apart from whatever they've, won with. Right. And depending even, tweaks for different tracks, but really the setup is not as big as us, the driver at those tracks. So it's about just refining and sort of tweaking on things. And when you find something, it's really just about making sure you stay within that box and tweak on it depending on each track. And so I think that's sort of hopefully where we'll be with the 75 going to Coda. It's doubleheader again, as you mentioned. So last year I did 5.5 hours in the cars between the two Xfinity truck on Saturday. And obviously the day before is practice qualifying. So it's a lot. But I loved it last year. I thought it was such an adventure. And so I'm really pumped to go do it again. And I think it will just make me better in the Xfinity car.
I think so too. And I know that you feel like this is probably a date you've circled on the calendar, but I know you road course specialists, like, you don't want to just be delineated as a road course specialist. You want to be known as the complete racer. But deep down, I am sure that when you looked at the schedule this year, you're like, towards the end of March, man, we're going to head to the deep in the heart of Texas, and we've got a shot at this thing. We might take home 2 trophies, as far as I'm concerned.
I've let the thought and, enter my brain, of course. Like, I'll have a couple chances this year to do the double on the same day, because I think, I don't know, I don't remember exactly how many, but there's a bunch of races I'm doing trucks and Xfinity on the same day. So that's gonna be it was like one of my small goals this year. I obviously want to win multiple races in the Xfinity series. I want to win multiple races in trucks. That's a goal for us in the 75. Also to win Bristol, either dirt or concrete in the 75. And then one of the last ones I saw was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you could win 2 races on the same day? So maybe we'll just get it all done right here at Coda this weekend. That would be wonderful. And I really, really think we have that opportunity. There's a lot of heavy hitters in both races, which is awesome. Love that. Make it all more sweet if we can go out there and, get the checkered flag. But if not, putting that aside, I think we can have very solid days, and especially on the Xfinity side with, the championship at stake, just the points and that sort of thing. I think we can just go out there and have a really, really positive day for the 48 team and put us in just an awesome position heading to Richmond.
I'm really looking forward to the Xfinity race for sure, just because it's a really stacked field, like you mentioned. And as we've seen in the past, it's really unpredictable too. And no matter who the star power is, there's always something that's captivating at that 3.5 mile road course track just outside of Austin. And I know that your trademark thing when you win a race is to plant the flag. Well, I'm just kind of wondering, not that I'm trying to give you the premonition of such, where exactly are you going to plant that flag at Coda? Because there's really very few grassy areas,
I think you could do it up in turn 1, right? Where the crowd is
that.
up there, and maybe in the ground, sort of leave it there for a little while and hopefully someone will bring it back to me. But yeah, it'd be that'd be a great problem to have. And I look forward to that issue of having to figure out exactly where I want to put that flag. That'd be wonderful.
I like that. See, I gave you a good problem to think about. So if it does happen, just give a little shout out to me.
Definitely. Gotcha.
Now, for someone like me, I am never going to have the audacity to drive a stock car. And I've never asked you this question in the years I've known you, but at least for Coda, just describe to me the experience of that in relation to driving a street car. Like, how can someone like me understand exactly what you go through when you race at that track?
So that's a great question. And I think I could talk for about 10 minutes about this, but I'll try to keep it more succinct. So
You're good.
Driving a stock car, a typical stock car, which is the Xfinity car or the Craftsman truck, the new next gen cars sort of don't let it in the frame of this conversation for now, because it's obviously a departure from what we've known as a stock car for many years. I always like to say them on road courses is like a water buffalo in a china shop, because it's a very heavy, very, I guess the best way to put it is it's a car and a vehicle that doesn't want to do what you're asking it to do. And so it's not designed to do this, right? It's not designed to go around a 3.5 mile Formula One circuit, nor is really some road cars, right? So that's really the essence of stock car racing, is that these are cars that are purposely not the best driving car you'll ever drive, but because they're supposed to relate to the road, it's supposed to be, normal cars doing amazing things, right? Or normal people doing amazing things as drivers. That's the concept of NASCAR, which makes it a lot of fun. So driving a stock car like the Xfinity car around COTA, one, it's got, just around 670 horsepower or so, which does not get through the rear tires perfectly at all, ever. So you're always dealing with a bit of wheel spin. That's always a hard thing, is putting the power down. It's a very heavy car, right? 3,400 pounds, give or take, with drivers and driver weight and sort of fuel and all that stuff. But give or take 3,400 pounds, which is a heavy race car. It has a 13-inch wheel, which means the brakes aren't as big as you could possibly have on some road cars, which we see on the next gen car. And so all those things combined make it that it goes very fast, but it goes very fast in a straight line. It then has to brake for a very long time, and then it has to get very slow for all the corners, right? And so it's just a very, it's a very, I want to say, like, unrefined experience. But when you're doing it right, and I, can tell you that there's few things as rewarding as putting together a really fast lap around a road course in a stock car, because you will have times where you're on the brake so long and for such a long period of time that you feel like you could count or have a conversation as you're holding the brake at its max capacity down into a corner, downshifting. You'll have times where you're hopping a curb and two tires are in the air. You're spinning the wheels off the X of a corner, and you think that is the sloppiest, worst lap that's ever been driven in a race car. And they're like, hey, that's P1 by a half a second. And you're like, oh, okay, never mind. Right? That's the experience. I guess for a road car, you can have a lot of that, but a better example would be like on the flip side is a Formula One car or an Indy car, right? A purpose-built, fastest thing they can create, where the driver is always almost behind the race car. The race car is more capable than the driver at times, especially if you're just getting that level. And so those cars are a refined experience, an experience of finding, those last little extra tenths, going into a corner a little deeper, rolling a little bit more speed, that sort of thing. But it's an entirely different experience, because it's a very high frequency, experience in terms of the car. You're trying to make the car do things it actually is designed to do. Whereas we're trying to take something that isn't designed to do that and make it do it. And so it's a more of a wrestle match between us and the car. And I love it because of all those reasons. Like, the driver can make a huge, huge difference in a stock car on a road course. And I know it said it's one of the most rewarding experiences, but it's also sometimes just the most fun when you're flying around a track and hitting curbs and braking forever and spinning the tires off the corner. And you just think, like, this is ridiculous, but it's awesome.
Oh, goodness. Now you've made me realize that's why you guys have to be such physically fit drivers. You can't just be like, hey, you're Larry down the street who's mowing my lawn. Like, you could drive this thing. No, that's really physically demanding. So I am never going to complain about driving my SUV anymore until I need to get new tires. So I'll put it that way to you. Man, I can definitely understand that even more so. So I appreciate that. I know the fans at home are going to be like, oh boy, I'm never going to complain about my everyday ride. You kind of got me thinking, though, with NASCAR, and that's probably what's made it so popular here in America compared to F1, although F1, of course, has made some gains in recent years with the documentary on Netflix. But, when you think about how it's an unrefined vehicle for drivers who are trying to harness it, like, you pretty much, like, drivers like you always say, we want the cars to be more difficult, more power. And some fans are like, well, I want to see side-by-side racing. And I may have asked you this in the past, but, like, how tricky is that balance between fighting the speed, but also endangering the closest on the track versus having the closest on the track and drivers like you are saying, well, this is like slot car racing?
I think the product in NASCAR in terms of the races is almost, we've talked about it too much to this point, where it's ad nauseum. And I think no matter what NASCAR race you take, up against other forms of racing in the world, it's going to rate higher in terms of passes, in terms of competition, parity, closeness to the field, all those things. It's going to be one of the highest ranking forms of motorsports in the world, and far outranking. And not to put them down, I'm a huge fan of Formula One. I've always been. It's what got me into racing. It was my first love in racing. But, that racing product is not really what they sell in Formula One. They sell the idea behind it all, the technology, the experience, the, events, that's so on and so forth, the reality show-esque background drama. The races are almost the last secondary part. And I think in NASCAR, the product speaks for itself, it truly does. And so I really think at this point, in terms of packages and horsepower and all that stuff, like I really don't pay attention much more. I think it's all very cool. It's a stock car. It's heavy. It's got power. They're hard to drive now, especially the short tracks in the next gen car, and what you'll see probably at the road courses. The Xfinity series is some of the best, most fun to drive cars in all of the planet right now. I just think all that is fine right now. It's not it's not an issue. For NASCAR, I really think the gap to what's happening out there is all the other stuff, right? The product is fine. It's making the rest of the product, being the event experience and the understanding the stories behind the personalities in the sport and that sort of thing. That's where the job, that's where the work has to be done. But I think when you look at the core product of the racing, to me, it's been fine, even through all the different, all the different packages and everything. It's low downforce, high downforce, more power, low power. Like, of course, as a driver, I want 1,000 horsepower, no downforce. But, if that's not reality in this day and age, I still think the cars are cool. They sound cool. They're fun to, they are hard to drive no matter what you drive in this level. If you're trying to win races, it's going to be hard. And if it was easy, I think a lot of us would probably just go win races easier sort of thing. So it's hard, right? And it's going to be hard. So I just think what's happened in Formula One has proven that the product on the racetrack is, probably not NASCAR's issue. And I say issue, I mean, probably not the area that needs the most tweaking, whereas the opportunity lies in everything else.
I think you nailed exactly what's going on for sure. And I've been saying that for recent times that, we've got the characters, we've got the package. It's just now about promoting you guys out there and the girls too who race, because if we do that, you're going to bring more eyes to the races on TV, like reading our articles, I hope, and videos, because you're an interesting character on your own, and a lot of your peers are too. That's why I'm still here. That's why you got Pockers, you got Dustin Long, and the rest of us who are just so captivated by what you guys and girls do out there in the racetracks. So, and your story alone, I mean, man, you are probably, aside from AJ Allmendinger, probably the poster boy of perseverance, because you have worked super hard to keep your name out there. You've done the pit reporting thing, which I'm not sure if you're doing that again this year, now that you're doing Xfinity, but I've always admired how you have kept after it. And last year you finally got your break to drive the car that's behind me right now.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, it looks really nice.
Yeah, I figured. See, we got this from last weekend during the good times, which there'll be more of those. You talk about how Xfinity racing is one of the best things in the world, but describe to me just how close the competition, that margin for error is once you enter the top 10.
It's really amazing. There's probably about 14 cars in the Xfinity series, maybe a little more, that are pretty much at the same level, equipment wise, funding wise, that sort of thing. And so, that in itself lends you to be in a very close competition with those exact cars week in and week out. But the other part that's fascinating to me, and I never got in, I shouldn't say this, I probably have a little bit, but I don't know if I truly realized it until I started racing this series full time again, which is, of those top 12 or so drivers in the Xfinity series, one thing that stuck out to me just in the first couple of weeks of racing is how hard we all race each other. And it is not like hard racing for the sake of hard racing. it's hard racing for the sake of like, I must beat you is the feeling and the thought process and sort of the vibe I get. And what's fascinating to me, it just hit me one day and I said, you know what it is? Of those 12 drivers at the top of this field, every single one of them thinks the day they get that checkered flag on Saturday, the call the next morning is going to be Rick Hendrick or Joe Gibbs saying, hey, you're coming to the big time. Welcome to Cup, right? Like that is the essence of this series, if you really think about it. So, you have a veteran like Justin Allgaier to a rookie or young driver like Sammy Smith to guys like me who, are reestablishing a career and that sort of thing. Josh Berry, who's the same age as me, who's, sort of in a similar spot, maybe getting a big break. And you realize, like, personally, I've tried to put all that aside, where this year I've been solely focused on this Xfinity car and winning races and winning that truck. And that's it. Like whatever happens past this, I don't even want it to enter my mind. My focus is on winning races right now and competing for a championship. But I noticed that, just you get this vibe, this sense that these 10 or so, 12 drivers all believe then, the success in this, the next day means they're going to the Cup Series, they're going to the big time. And it makes sense. This is the only thing above here is that, right? And so they say names are made here and that sort of thing, but it's truly the vibe in this series. I can't stress enough that you have a set of drivers who absolutely believe they are one great move, one win, a great season away from being in that series. And that's the top. That's where we all want to be. And so that's just a really cool thing. And I don't know if that always gets stressed enough. I think, NASCAR is so cool because you have guys who have made careers in the lower series as opposed to other forms of racing. That doesn't really happen. But this is a bit of a ladder system. And when you get to this spot and you're in these top 10 spots in Xfinity, it's a dog eat dog cutthroat world because each one thinks they're vying for one of those seats over there. And so it's just a really fascinating dynamic. And I love it. I think it's cool as hell. I'm like, that's awesome. I've been really into this Full Swing documentary on Netflix with the golf deal. It's like kind of their drive to survive. And I think it's fascinating because I think golfers are so closely aligned to race car drivers in terms of mentally what it takes to be successful. And they're very closely aligned to us because, their performance is really relying on themselves. But they talk about, getting their PGA Tour card and doing this series below that, which is like the Korn Ferry Tour, which is their Xfinity series. And it's just a very similar vibe in that, that the top guys there are all just looking at the next spot, the top. And I don't know. I think it's awesome. So yes, that if you want to know why the Xfinity series is so intense, the cars are fun to drive. They're really cool. And the competition is as cutthroat as it comes.
Oh man, sounds like a good old soap opera, but motorsport style. So I guess for the older folks at home, and this is gonna show my age, PK. If you fans love Dallas, then watch the Saturday racing on Xfinity. At least no one's Bobby or J.R. Ewing, I don't think so. I might have gone above
I don't
your
know
head,
any of
though.
this. I have no idea what you're talking about. Nope.
You're gonna probably want to watch it on Amazon Prime after this. So don't blame me if you become a fan. Now I got a couple more questions before you hit up Dallas.
Good.
And get back to your day.
Yeah. Thank you.
You got it, my friend. What flavor of Big Machine spiked vodka do you think best epitomizes you personality-wise and your approach as a driver?
That's awesome. So cranberry, which is the color that's on our car. Some people like to call it pink, but you cannot call it pink. It's cranberry.
Okay.
I loved a cranberry spiked cooler. So to me, that's just a go-to flavor in any sort of product. I just think it's a very refreshing flavor. And in a spiked cooler, it's very refreshing. And hopefully I'm refreshing in that, I like to be dip myself and be, just be true and authentic to who I am and my life and what makes me, light up. And so to me, cranberry is true and authentic, and it's also the color of our car. So I love that one.
There you go. You guys got a PR advocate for that flavor right there. And maybe you'll get some chug points for them on Saturday, like those Coke drivers often do.
Love that. Yes, we couldn't do it after the truck race, but we'll do it after the Xfinity race. So
I was gonna say, if you do it after the truck race, you've got some problems, my friend. Now, for my last question, I wish I made that my last question, because this one's gonna be maybe a little sentimental for me to ask, but again, you're the epitome of perseverance. So let me ask you this. What advice would you give 2013 version of yourself about your life experiences in motorsports and just everything you've gone through? Like, what would you tell yourself from 2013?
oof. That's a great question. Huh. I've always thought about those guys who like write letters to their their younger selves and such. And I always think that's so fascinating. I think it's a good form of journaling and that sort of thing. And I've done some of that stuff. And I've tried to journal and that sort of thing. And I think it'd be so cool to do that, but I don't know if I always stick with it. But if I had to tell 2013 me something, one would be to relax. That would be a really key part, to relax and, sort of lean into the idea that I always used to say that everything works out. It always has, always will. But I really think I could have used a little bit of that back then. And I don't know how to, I guess discipline would have been another thing. Would have been, hey, find a way to get a little bit more discipline in your life. And I think those two things could have made me more successful at that time. And then lastly, I think just have more fun. I when I look back at those days, there was a lot of pressure, of course, because you were moving up through the ladder, the pressure to live up to, a 9-win ARCA season 2-3 years earlier. Having made not having the best breaks in terms of competitive equipment and that sort of thing, but surviving and moving forward. And I really think if I'm trying to think of how to say this the right way. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, I really think if if I just had a little more discipline, relaxed, and had more fun, or enjoyed, I say fun. I think I had fun. I think one thing I saw Corley Joy say the other day that, the media stuff and everything else is work, but trying to treat the driving like a hobby. And I really think when I look back at that time, I was mixing up the idea that like driving was work and fun was outside the car. Really, the fun is driving the car, right? That's the fun. Like, we get to drive damn race cars for a living. People pay me. Literally, I get paid to go drive in circles and try to go faster than other people. Like, that is badass. Like, I don't know how you ever lose sight of how fun that is and how cool that is. And if I had to say something to 2013 me, it would be that's the fun and that's the cool thing. And everything else is work. So that would be my bits of advice.
That's really good sound advice right there. And I think you kind of made me think that we all perpetually just want to have that fountain of youth as we get older. And I think that's what it is. You nailed it. Your day job is just to drive a stock car around the racetrack. It's not that simple, but that's basically the rudimentary perspective of it.
I don't even like using job, because it's the reason I bring up that quote from Corey was that I just saw that and laughed, because that's something I've really leaned into the last 2 or 3 years, which I tell that story about, the end of 2019 into 2020. I was pretty sure my driving days were done. And then I got asked to come back with the 75 at that Pocono. And so I was on the grid and I just just made a pact to myself to realize this could all disappear, to have fun with it, enjoy it. And I even had that, that funny quote where I was like, I love this shit. Like, this is awesome. And so that's something I've leaned into really, really hard. And I just find when I'm not getting the best performance out of myself, it's because I forget how cool it is, how fun it is, how awesome it is to be a professional race car driver at a high level as the NASCAR Xfinity Series and Truck Series. And yeah, you can't lose sight of that, because I don't even want to use that word job, because it's not a job. It's cool as hell. Like I'm in simulators all the time, and I'm in these meetings and I'm doing these notes, and it seems like a 7-day-a-week thing. And someone recently said to me, like, wow, like your job is so busy. And it's like, whoa, time out. That's all fun. I was like, this is amazing. This is the coolest shit ever. So I was like, work's doing taxes that I got to do this week. That work's doing the financial stuff and everything else. Like, that's work. This is badass, and it's fun. And somehow I'm in the lucky enough position to be paid to do it.
And you've deserved that. You deserve it. You should be there. I've been saying that since we've met each other back in 2013. I'll say it to you today. You're definitely one of those drivers who, if fans don't know who to root for, I would want to think that they would look up to you as that person that they could go and support in the grandstands or watch from home or social media. So you, my friend, you are living. How about this? You're living the dream.
Hey, there we go. I love that. Yeah, and I should say, don't think I don't take it seriously, because I take this very, I put a tremendous amount of effort right now into this, and I want to win so damn bad. Like, you'd have no idea the level of desire and burning fire inside of me to go win races right now, and to be as close as we were at Atlanta just makes that burn. I don't even know if it's possible to burn hotter or heavier, but it almost whetted the appetite a little bit more to be like, we are going to go win some races. We're going to make it happen. And so, but we're going to have fun doing it. I think you can do both.
And when that happens, you can bet that the podium finish is going to document all of those moments. So
Hey.
we hope to see that. So PK, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me today. Wish we got to do it at COTA. I know we're both busy dudes this week, but I'm sure we'll bump into each other at the racetrack, at least on Saturday for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate you having me on. Thanks everyone at the podium finish, and look forward to seeing everyone at COTA.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, you take it easy, and I'll see you at the racetrack.
See you, buddy.
See you, buddy.